Hello everybody and welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the focus paths for the Together for Victory nations and ranking the different paths on how fun I think they are to play. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm pushing for 100 subscribers before the next DLC releases, so let's try to get there and let's get into the video. So to start out with, we're going to go with the British Raj. Now, the British Raj is going to be getting a big update in the next couple months, so I believe we're going to go over this one. Probably is going to be the briefest, just because it's going to change a lot soon, so this will probably be one of the last times we'll see this tree. Now, the way I broke this down is I broke them down into different paths, and then ranked the paths, but when I say paths, I don't necessarily mean every single path, because I think especially with these older focus trees, there's not really enough distinction between some of them to call them their own path. Like, you can honestly kind of do the same thing on both paths if you pick one or the other. So it kind of makes it where, like, they're really not a different path. So I'll explain that when we get to nations where you would think there'd be more paths than there actually is. But getting into the British Raj, we got 3 paths. So we have the Indian People's Army, which is the communist path, the Indian National Army, the fascist path, and then the Indian National Congress, the historic path. So starting out with the People's Army's path, I rank this one a 1 out of 10. There's just nothing to be had here. Now, it could be a little bit higher. I have played Communist India. The problem is that it is basically the exact same as the Indian National Army, so and I think the Indian National Army, little spoiler, is a little bit better. So that automatically means you're probably never going to do the communist one, because realistically all you get is a little bit of armor technology and land doctrine, and then like a research buff. So because this is shared, so I don't count these. I don't count shared, when I'm talking about paths, I try not to count shared focuses or like the other, like anything else over here to the path as best I can, just because like that's not really the path, that's the other stuff of the tree. Like, it doesn't matter that they have army buffs or whatever to this tree, just because you can get the army buffs in any tree, with any of the trees, so it's not really a benefit for that tree specifically. And with these, like, the level 5 general and all these factories, like, these are nice factories. You get, 3 civs and 2 mills? That's really nice, but you get it either way, so it doesn't really affect this path specifically. So moving over to the Indian National Army, I gave it a 3 out of 10. Now, the reason it's so much higher than the People's Army is because they're basically they're the exact same focuses, where you go communist civil war or fascist civil war and you join the Comintern or the Axis. And with this one, you actually can get, like, with this focus, you get the paratroopers technology, and then with this one, you actually get a 200% research model for fighters, some air doctrine, and a breakthrough, and 50% breakthrough. I just think that's way better than the Combined Arms Academy, and like overall, that makes this one just a lot better than the other one. Now, it's not that good, to be honest. Most of the fun you're having is that you're India, you just got a huge population. But I just thought that's how it should be. Now, moving over to the historic section, gave it a 3.5, because it's really not that much better than the Indian National Army. Like, you can get your marginalized Muslim community a bit better. I believe you keep it with this one. I'm not 100% sure on that one. It's been a while. So if you lose that in the Civil War, that actually is a really big buff, and I would actually raise this up probably to a 4 if that's true, but I don't think that is. But then you get like princely states, and some of this is not so bad. It's really not all that good, to be honest. I just think it's slightly better because you're staying with the British Empire, so like you actually can fight Japan, and you get to keep the Commonwealth research buff. And while I try not to count the other parts of the tree to the paths, I think with this one it's kind of an exception, because like with the industrial paths, you need to be a puppet to actually do these focuses, besides like administrative oversight. Like, clamp down on corruption, you have to be, I guess technically you could probably get this done with being independent, but like over here with British investors, you actually can't get these focuses without breaking, if you break away with the Civil War, so you do lose out on these. This is 2 military factories, that's 3 civilian factories plus railway construction speed, and then another 3 military factories. So that's a total of 5 mills, 3 civs, and a railway buff. That's pretty decent, especially for India, where you get 1 military factory here, 1 civ here, and then 2 dockyards. That's all your that's all of your factories. I mean, then if you go here, you get 3 civs and 2 mills. So, like, it kind of offsets that. It's kind of easy, but you do get more mills doing it this way. So I kind of wanted to just point that out there, that like that does affect it a little bit, but realistically, this isn't really a good tree. This is one of the worst in the game, so I'm really glad it's getting updated. So I don't really want to talk about this one all that much. Moving over to New Zealand. So now New Zealand over here has what I would consider 4 paths. They have the historic path, the fascist into darkness path, the laissez-faire communist path, and the constitutional amendment independent alt democracy, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Now, as you can see here, there is a split in the fascist path, but I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Like, this one you can create factions and get 50 political power. This one you join Japan, and then you get in the research group. Now, the thing is, if you do this one, you can still get into the faction with Japan. It might not be the easiest, but if you're at war with the Allies, they're going to probably let you in the co-prosperity sphere. So that kind of, like, the only focus you'd miss is the research sharing group, but 50 political power, and you could do faction shenanigans too. Like, so like, I don't really think there's big enough a difference to make it 2 different paths, so I consider them 1. And while a few of these don't really have all that much difference, there's enough that I consider it different enough for a different path to play through. Alright, so starting out with like the independent democracy path, I gave it a 1 out of 10. This is probably one of, if not the worst path we're going to be discussing today. It might be the worst path in the game currently, because what it is you go to State of Westminster. Well, you form the first Labour government. You do the State of Westminster, which you would do for either of these 2 focuses. You do the constitutional amendment, and then once you're fully independent, which you have to do by yourself, you do get 1,000 autonomy points and 70 political power with this, which is pretty nice. But then once you're free, you can do this focus. You leave the Allies, which sucks. And then you can create a faction, which really doesn't help until later in the game, where you could probably form one with America, but it's it's horrible. The only benefit this path has over the other 2 that with the Statute of Westminster is that you get to keep the first Labour government, which it's not that great. I mean, 5% consumer goods, 5 stability, 2% output for efficiency growth and factory and dockyard output. It's not really that good. Like, it's all right, but it's not worth not doing these 2 other paths over that. Moving over, we got the laissez-faire. Gave this one a 2 out of 10. It's not really that good. When you do the laissez-faire, you actually lose out on pretty much every buff. You lose all the buffs you get from the first Labour government, which sucks. It's not that much, but it sucks that you do a focus to get these buffs, then you do another focus to get some autonomy and political power, and then the next focus you lose the buffs. That's just kind of sad. Moving down, you leave once you're fully independent, which also sucks. Like, you have to get yourself up and then independent to even do this focus. Then you leave the Allies, you get 100 political power, and then you get 10% construction speed. 10% construction speed's alright. The problem is, you're New Zealand. You don't have that big an industry, and you can't play that tall. Like, even if you rush your industry to make sure you can keep building factories, at a certain point you're just going to run out of building slots. So like the 10% construction, while nice, isn't groundbreaking. Then you can join the Comintern. It's alright. I mean, it's not great, but with the distance modifier, you might not be able to join right away. The world tension is low, but it's not really that good. And tech sharing, not that good. It's not that good of a path. I gave it a 2 instead of a 1, just because it's relatively better than this one, but not by much. Moving over to the End of the Darkness Fascist path, also gave it a 2 out of 10, because it does the same thing. It removes every buff you got, and then gives you 10% construction. So, same issue that the Communist Path has. They both also give you autonomy progress, which helps you get free, which is nice. So like you can get but then again you have to be free to do these focuses, so it's not the best. And then all you can do is either create a faction and get 50 political power, or not do that and then just join Japan. But you can join Japan with this focus too. So just there's nothing to do. Honestly, the Comintern one's just slightly better, just because you would probably, but it is longer, so it's like, neither of them are really that good. It's not even really worth trying to figure out which one's better. They're both pretty bad. Now finally, we have the Historic Path. Now the Historic Path, I gave a 4 out of 10. Now that sounds a lot higher than you would think that the Historic New Zealand Path has, considering these other 3 are really bad. You would think the Historic wouldn't be so good. Now the thing is, with the Historic one, you got to keep the Commonwealth Research bonus, and then increase it, which is nice. You got to keep the First Labor Government. It's nice. This is volunteer one, not so great. Don't really care about it. But then you also get Stomp Out Pacifism, which gets you some recruitable factor. Minus 50% subversive activities, which that includes justifications. You lose a little stability, that's not so bad, and then you gain war support, which is pretty nice as a democratic country. Honestly, it's a pretty decent focus. It's not the best, but it's much better than stuff over here. And then you get even more Commonwealth research, so you can get up to another 10%. This one also gets you political power. Like, it's not the worst. Now, the real reason I even gave this over I probably would have given it a 3 with what this has. Now, the only reason I give it a 4 is because of Mallory Volunteers. Now, this is accessible to all the focuses, and you would think that Mallory Conscription would probably be better because you get the 1% recruitable. You also get more building slots, which would be, this is the path you would do if you're doing Into Darkness or Leah Fair, because you can get the building slots, which helps out with your, when you have extra construction speed, and then you get more population. Now, the reason this one's pretty good, actually, you probably would want to go with this one. 2% is better than 1%. It's better, and that's better for the 5% factory, consumer good factories is nothing. Now, the reason this one I counted towards this to give a better score is because with this you can request control of Pacific Islands, and if you're in the Allies, which you will be here, you can request control of all the islands and pretty much form Polynesia. The only ones you would be missing is Saipan. No, that's not Saipan. Yep, here we are. Saipan you would be missing, and you can also get a core on Taiwan, which you could, but you'll be at war with the Japanese anyway, if you're in the Allies, so you can get those too. So you can form Polynesia, which, well, it's not great, and it's kind of just waiting, because you can request some of the stuff, and then you have to wait for the U.S. and Japan to be at war, and you to be at war with them, so that's 1941 before you really can do much with it. It is something, so I count that, and makes it give it a 4. Moving over to Australia. Now, Australia has 5 paths. Now, when I was first determining how many paths this country had, I actually had 4 originally, because I didn't think the Join the Comintern and the Workers' Paradise was a big enough distinction. I thought you'd probably just always go Workers' Paradise, because you can just join the Comintern whenever you want. But I decided because of how this focuses work to actually split it, where Comintern and Workers' Paradise are 2 different ones. So we'll start out with the Comintern one. I gave it a 3 out of 10. Now, the reason I gave it a 3 out of 10 is straight up just because of this one focus. Indirect support. 20% factory output and dockyard output for a year. And all you need is just 500 guns in storage. That's pretty decent. 20%, it's not bad. Delegation to China and commitment to the cause both suck. At least with this focus, you do become free. You actually don't have to spend the political power or just get your autonomy up. That is one bonus this has over the New Zealand tree. But these all really aren't that good focuses. But both the communist ones have it, so it's really the difference here, which is direct support, which gives you volunteers. No one cares about volunteers. Or direct support, which gives you the 20%. I think 20% is pretty decent. Now, the reason this is important is because Workers' Paradise can only be done if you do direct support, which all it leads to is a focus on Japan. If you go communist, you can justify a war on Japan. It's not that big a deal. So that made me split this into two paths, because direct support, I would always want, if I'm doing communist Australia, I would always want to do direct support, which means I have to do Comintern. So it kind of makes Comintern its own path. You also can create factions and then join the Comintern. So this is actually not bad, because you can join the Comintern, leave, and do faction shenanigans, which is fun. Or you can just stay in the Comintern. And then if you go to war with Japan, you can call the Comintern in. Well, you can call the Soviet Union in and Mongolia and stuff in. Pretty decent. And then research bonus. Not the best, but it's here. Now, New Zealand Puppet and Demand New Zealand are what this is either communist path can do, so it's not really its own thing. And then Demand New Zealand's between both communist paths and the fascist path. So I didn't really factor it in too much, but it does give, this path gives you 2 chances of getting New Zealand, which is nice. So that's another benefit to its side. But realistically, it's only a 3 out of 10. It's not the greatest. Honestly, it's very hard carried by the 20% output, because Australia has 17 factories starting out, and it has a decent tree to get factories. So 20% by the time you get to this, if you do the factories first and then get the 20%, it's pretty decent. It's kind of just carrying it. Moving over to Workers' Paradise, we already discussed it. Really, 1 out of 10. There's no reason to do it. You can create factions. You can do that with the join the Comintern, so there's no benefit there. War goal on Japan, that ain't worth anything. And then you get a volunteer focus, which sucks. Just overall, 2 out of the 3 unique stuff you'd have for each path are completely actually all 3 are worthless. This is so much worse than this, and you're not going to use it. This is just better than this, because it has the same effects. And honestly, the research is way better than the war goal, because you can get the war goal with either path. Moving over to the center party path, the fascist path. I gave it a 4 out of 10. Now, it's not really that good of a path, but it has a couple things, and if you play it right, it's not so bad. So, again, Demand New Zealand's kind of its own. It doesn't really affect this ranking just because both paths can do it. But supplying the Indonesians and then uprising, well, when you do that, it doesn't, and then it doesn't make them a puppet of you or anything. It does break them free. You can send volunteers, win the war, and then justify a war goal on the free Dutch East Indies. And then you can puppet them and get the resource rights and all that. So it's pretty decent. You can protect the Southwest Pacific, which you can possibly, I think, get British Malaya with, which is good. And then there's the choice between a deal with Japan and our own empire. Now, the reason I didn't make this 2 different choices is because with our own empire, you can create factions and then go to war with Japan. And then this one, you get a deal with Japan where you give them either Malaya, which that would suck, or some other territory, which again sucks. And then you get research group. And the thing is, you can get into the Japanese faction even if you do our own empire. So it's not really that big a deal. And if you go with a deal with Japan, you do that, you can leave and justify a war goal. So they're really not there's really not a difference between the two. So I just decided there's no reason to rank them as different paths, because you can do everything with either path. So it's one path in my opinion. But yeah, it's a 4. You can possibly get free New Zealand to free Malaya, and definitely get Indonesia. It's got some stuff to do. It's not the best, but it's a playthrough. Moving over, we got Protect the Homeland. Now, this is the alt democracy path, where you go independent and you form a faction, and usually, I believe you invite the U.S., really. It's that kind of stuff. Now, this one's not so bad. I gave it a 3 out of 10. Now, the reason I gave it a 3 out of 10 is because, 1, you can become a faction leader with the U.S. pretty easily. That's pretty strong. Your main opponent's going to be Japan, which you get a war goal here, which actually is kind of nice, because you're a democracy. Sometimes it can be hard to get to war and justify them. So that's nice. You can also protect the Dutch colonies after the Netherlands is capitulated, so you can possibly get the Dutch East Indies as a puppet, and the U.S. as a faction mate to go in on Japan. Overall, I don't think it's better than the Center Party just because you can finagle it to get the Dutch East Indies and New Zealand, and then all that. So like, I think this is worse than that, but it's something. You can do something with it. Now moving over to the historical, I have the historical for the first time really low, and that's as the worst. This is one of the worst paths Australia has. I give it as 2 out of 10. Now the reason I gave it a 2 out of 10 is there's pretty much nothing you would want to do. Like, you keep your Commonwealth research buff and you can boost it. That's okay, but that's not that good. These two focuses really just suck. Like, I think this just gets you relations. This one gets like some forts. I don't think you get anything out of it. Adopt Westminster gives you some political power, but and a useless advisor and some autonomy. Not that good. More Commonwealth research buff. It's okay, but not that big a deal. This gets forts and stuff in British Malaya. That sucks. And then this is a decent. These are actually two. Like, you get a MIO for your planes, and then a decent like buff to planes. Like, that's not so bad, but that's it. You get plane buffs. If you play historic, if you play with this path, you get plane buffs. That's it. That's not very fun. Now, granted, you're Australia. You're probably not going to be using a lot of troops, so you can just have like maybe make some super marines and then have the air and stuff. But I just don't think it's that fun. Moving over to South Africa. South Africa has 5 paths. So we'll go with what I would say is the best path first, which is the anti-colonial crusade communist path. Now, this path's pretty alright. So you get, I mean, the beginning isn't all that great. Black Volunteers is actually pretty good for the recruitable, and then you get equal opportunities, which it removes one of your bad spirits and gives you a good spirit in return. It's pretty good. And then Burn the King's Portrait for some political power. Not bad. This is shared with the Join the Comintern one, which is kind of why I'm not really counting all that much, but that's actually pretty good for why it does better over the other ones. Now, the real meat and potatoes is you can demand Madagascar once Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact has been signed and France has capitulate. So you can try to get this off of Vichy, France. I mean, it's pretty free land. Always good. Then you get a faction. Always cool. I mean, faction shenanigans can be fun. It's not a great draw, but then you get a war goal on Portugal and Belgium. Well, Portugal, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. Now, this can actually be pretty good because you can form Mutapa, which has been increased with the 2 Zambian states. It's been expanded on. So, and with Portugal and the UK, you can easily get to war with them to form that nation and then continue your way up. And then with Belgium, you can get the Congo, and then you can declare war on Belgium. Like, it's a whole thing. It's actually not so bad. It works out pretty decently because it gives you quick, easy war goals. So, 5 out of 10. It's not so bad. It actually has a what's it called? An achievement with it. I've done the run a couple times. It's fun enough. Maybe I shouldn't give it a 5. Maybe it should be a 4. But I think it's fun enough that it can get a 5. Moving over, we got Join the Comintern. Now, Join the Comintern, it's a 2. It's not very good. Now, the whole reason I even have it as its own path instead of just leaving as anti-colonial crusade, because you'd always do that, is that Support the World Revolution gives you minus 50% subversive activity cost and 5% war support. Now, the subversive activities is that's war justifications as well, so you get 50% off war justifications. That's something. And then Soviet advisors, which gets you 5 org, 5 planning speed, then 2 25 reductions for mass assault doctrine, and 2 50% reductions for land doctrine, and then you get a treaty with USSR for research. Now, this is you can get quite a bit of doctrines really cheap and really fast with this, and this can get you war goals pretty quick. So, and then you're obviously in the Comintern. So, I think that's enough to give it its own playthrough and path. That counted as one, but it's just not a very good one, to be honest. Then moving over to the first of the two fascist paths, we have South Africa first. Now, South Africa first, I gave a 1 out of 10. It's not very good. Now, all of these focuses here are shared by either the historical or the other fascist path, which is the German coup. It's not so pretty much everything else doesn't like all these focuses don't count towards these two trees. And neither does a king for our people. So South Africa first has two focuses basically. The one where you become free and leave the Allies and get 10% stability and 70 political power, and then a war goal on the United Kingdom. That's not really much. Now, the nice thing about this one is that you do get free and you don't go into a civil war. The other one puts you into a civil war. But I believe it has at least some stuff to it that I think makes it a little bit better. So, it has something to it. This one, you just become free and then you can go to war with the UK. It's honestly just a lot worse. Like, if you're going to do that, do the anti-colonial crusade. Like, realistically, there's no point in doing this. Moving over, we have the German coup, which I gave a 2 out of 10. Now, with this focus, you get 1 mil, 1 civ, and some forts and air bases stuff. Isn't terrible. But you get into a civil war. But then after that, you can actually get infrastructure and building slots in the occupied territory, such as Rhodesia, Buchaland, and Tanzania, as you invade up into the British Empire. You also get German scientists for research buff. And really the reason I gave it a 2 instead of a 1, because it has a civil war, is the Volker movement, where you get half a percentage of recruitable, and then the two factories. I think it's enough to get it a 2 instead of a 1. So really it's not that good of a path, sadly. Moving over to the final path, we have the historic path. Now the historic path I gave a 3 out of 10. The reason is it pretty much has, it's pretty similar to the fascist path because you can get Native Law Amendment Act, the Voetrekker movement, the Work for All Poor. Like, you can do outlaw strikes, but you probably want to extend the Cape Corps instead. And like, you can fix your bad spirit, like the Osser. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Really, the reason I gave it a 3 is secure interest in Africa. You can get, if the UK approves, which they usually do, you get all their colonies up to Ethiopia, up to like South Sudan. It's pretty decent. There's a lot more building slots. Now there's not really any resources. I mean, there's some chromium. I mean, chromium kind of sucks, and you already got a good amount of it, so not really that big a deal. I mean, 7 tungsten and 3 rubber. I mean, it's not nothing. It's just not a lot. But, and then you get all the extra build slots. I mean, they won't be cores, but you can get some clients up, get more manpower. It's something. It's not really a lot, but it's something. I mean, if somehow you get to war with Portugal, you can form Mutapa. So, I mean, that's something. So I'm not going to say it's the worst path. It's just not that good of a path. Now moving over to the final nation we're going to be discussing, we got Canada. Now Canada, I really like. So we might have a little bit more to talk about with this one because it's the tree that's had the most touch up with the war effort patches. It's had a whole new focus path added, and just overall it's the one I like to play the most, honestly. I don't really play the other 4, but I will play Canada when I feel like it. It's a very nice focus tree. Can't complain too much. So starting off with the first communist path is Canada United. Now, technically, you could say there's 3 communist paths, but realistically, I say there's 2. There's the Trotskyite path and the Canada United. Now, with Supply the Red Army, you give the Soviet Union some guns, and then that's about it. And then you can join the Comintern. With this one, you at least get some forts and coastal forts, and you get like all these coastal forts. You can create factions, and you both share the communist ideals buff. So, like, and with this, again, you can join the Comintern as this Canada, so this at least gives you forts instead of nothing. I mean, it's the same focus tree. This one at least gives you the option to be able to create factions to make faction shenanigans. That's the reason I even called it the Canada United path. You can honestly do either way. There is no difference between these two paths. It's a 1 out of 10. It is just god awful. They didn't even try to fix it. They added a whole new path because it's that bad and it's going to need a whole overhaul. Moving over to the Trotsky-like path, I gave it a 4 out of 10. It's not the best the tree has, but it's competent. I mean, the People United gets you 15% recruitable factor. That's not bad. Party stability factor of 15%. Pretty good. You get here the reactivate the Farmers Utility League, which gets you a total of 5 building slots. It also greatly modifies the Great Depression, which you can fix with this tree over with the what is it? The industrial tree. But if you do fix it this way, and then you do the I believe it's either you fix it with this tree first. This one will give you a temporary. If the Great Depression has been removed, a different bonus will be applied. There you go. So you can actually get another buff onto this, or you can just easily, really quickly get your Great Depression fixed up a lot. So either way, it's not a bad focus. We have introspective communism, which gives you minus 50% subversive activities cost. Again, that's justification time. That's good. Gets you 8% on both factory output and dockyard output, plus more daily communism, which with the stability modifier will keep your stability really high, which is nice. I mean, you already get 2% here, so that's a 10% total. Not bad. The downside is you cannot join factions, which is a downside. It does hurt this path. Then you have spirit of the true revolution, which gets you 5% non-core manpower, minus 20 training time, minus 5% resistance target, and minus 10% land doctrine cost. And then you also have access to defensive scheme number 1 with the fascist path, which gets you a war goal in the U.S., which if you combine with this, where you get 5% non-core manpower and less resistance, it'll help you keep the U.S. under control. So overall, pretty decent tree. Again, 4 out of 10. It's not the best the tree has, but it's a competent tree. You can do something with it. Honestly, the problem is that you can't join factions. That really does hurt this tree a bit. But besides that, not so bad. Alright, moving over, we got the blue shirts. Now, the blue shirts, I gave a 5 out of 10. It's a pretty decent tree. Now, it does have a split, but again, I don't really think there's much of a difference. You can join Germany whenever you want. Or, like this one, you get extra max volunteers. I mean, you're probably not sending volunteers. And it gives some influence to Mexico, but that's just going to, even if they flip, they're eventually going to go to civil war. They're not a good ally. Skewer the Eagle gives you create factions, which is nice. So, like, you can go either way. Just join Germany early, or have the ability to create factions. It makes no difference. And then you can either demand Labrador and Newfoundland or get the concessions. So you can actually get the rest of your cores without having to go to war with the UK. And then you also still get access to the United Kingdom war goal. Not the United Kingdom, the United States war goal. It's really nice. You also get the Dominion of Canada Rifle Association, which 3 different trees have access to, but it's still a decent buff. I mean, cheaper infantry equipment helps you take out the US, and then you get, really the reason it's a 5 out of 10 is the 2% recruitable. You're Canada, you don't got a lot of manpower, and then you also are locked from going up without doing a lot of commit to the war. It's pretty hard to get a lot of manpower as Canada, so that really just puts you over the top. Then moving over, we got the Permanent Joint Defense Board. Now this is the independent alt democracy tree. I gave it a 2 out of 10. It's really bad, to be honest, but it should be a 1 out of 10, but the whole reason I even gave it a 2 out of 10 is because it has access to the Newfoundland, the Canadian Citizen Act, and the Dominion of Canada Act, where these two are accessed by the historic and the other democracy, and this one's accessible to these 3. So those don't, but that helps out. But the real reason it's a 2 instead of a 1 is just because the Habakkuk carrier and then the Refuge for Scientists. I think it's kind of funny. You can get 50% naval engineering breakthrough progress and a minus 15% construction, a minus 15% production cost for ice aircraft carriers, plus 10% research for them. And then you get Pie Creek bonus and a carrier model bonus, and then you get 5% special projects speed. I think it's kind of funny. Like, you can get ice carriers as Canada, and then you're going to be in the faction with the U.S., so you can play Naval Canada with ice carriers. It's funny enough that I gave it a 2 instead of a 1, to be honest. Like, before the DLC, I would have gave it a 1, but this is enough to get it to a 2. It would at least be a funny playthrough. Moving over, we have the Historic Tree. Now, the Historic Tree, I gave a 6 out of 10, the highest on this entire list. And that's because this is a very fun tree. Now, the reason I gave it a 6 out of 10 is you get the Commonwealth, which gives you all these research buffs, these two. Another 8% on top of what you already have, which is pretty good. Shadow Factories gives you 3 mills, and you only have to be at 5% world tension. That's easy. The Plan, which gives you all these fighter, like all the plane buffs, which as Canada is pretty nice. I mean, decryption speed's not that big a deal, honestly. It being 70 kind of sucks. But then you get this Supply of the Empire, which gives you 3 100% excavation bonuses. Really nice. And then you move into the aluminum and the oil, where you get 36 oil in Alberta. And then this is 28 and 8, that's 36 aluminum, which with infrastructure bonuses and excavation, which you get bonuses for, is a lot more than that. And as you can see, aluminum and oil, well, you need those for planes. You get a plane buff. It's like, it pushes you, at least in a playstyle where this is very powerful, to build planes, and then you can build great tanks and stuff, or you just go all in on planes and just bomb the Germans into submission, just destroy their air force and just completely neutralize them. Like, I think it makes it the best. Like, it's a coherent focus tree that has that pushes you in a direction, and it's strong enough that it's worth doing. Like, even if you don't do planes, you can sell these resources to buff up your economy. And again, like, this also gives economy. Like, the only focus that's even coming close to competing is the blue shirts for the recruitable population. But this, I think it's enough to put it at a 6. But that'll wrap it up for all these nations. Now, I'm thinking the next video we might go through and do a Death or Dishonor version of this. I will exclude Hungary, because Hungary really is more a Gotterdammerung tree now at this point. But I think this is a very fun little style of video. So I'd appreciate it if you guys would give a comment below on what your favorite tree of the Together for Victories is. It's probably going to be a Canada tree, but I'd be surprised. But you guys can surprise me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.